As athletes, a lot of times we train from the neck down, and there's a huge focus now that you're starting to see people are getting on the bandwagon. They're realizing we really need to treat the mental fitness of the athlete as well.
What you focus on, you will find. Think about it just for a second. How many times do you put your attention on something and poof, it manifests? And you're sitting there wondering how the heck that happened, right? And I'm talking about the good stuff and the bad stuff. There's a reason why I am always reminding you to be kind to the mind. Thoughts become things. And when it comes to performance, athletes know this best. The power of the mind, the mental fitness that can determine what happens next in the arena, on the field, in the courts, or even in life in general. Janine Charron is not only a former Division I athlete and professional hockey player, she's also a sports mom, a breast cancer survivor, and a mindset coach for competitive athletes. And when it comes to facing life's biggest adversities, she's doing her best to teach her kids and her clients how to find the tiger within, the power of resiliency and grace. During our conversation on HIListically Speaking, Janine opened up about how she has navigated some pretty big storms, both on the ice and off, from bankruptcy and breast cancer to parenthood and even divorce. She shares tools that help your kids self-lead to be better mental and physical athletes. You'll discover the healing hand that she is most grateful for when it came to discovering her breast cancer and how sitting in the silence was the self-care she needed. And she not only shares a peek into her playbook, she answers parents' questions about kids in sports on everything from building confidence and resiliency to tackling those fears and leading with intention. You scored big tuning into this one, so take a listen. Okay, Janine, the one song I'm thinking about right now with this T.I.G.E.R method is the Survivor song. That's what's coming to mind. That's where I'm going with this. And I know that you know what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. Love the T.I.G.E.R. That's I used to come out of the tunnel of my UNH hockey years listening to that song.
So I find it fascinating that you are not only a former Division I athlete, but you played professional hockey. We hear about hockey being such a guy sport, but what I love about you is that you really embraced a sport that is predominantly known by men, for men to play this sport. And that's a pretty intense sport to do that. Something we really hear about with the Canadians especially, which I believe you are.
Yeah, absolutely I am. Yep. And we put a rink up in the backyard and with the kids, and yeah, hockey's the name of the game.
I actually have friends that did that as well because their kids are total hockey players. But you and I are familiar with each other. We met through a group, a writers group, the Authorpreneur group, which is through HILhouse. Shout out to our friends at HILhouse. And, learning about your story and basically embracing that T.I.G.E.R method, what you're doing, and how life's currency is really showing up in this world. I want to really touch on that. I want to give you a chance to answer some questions from our listeners, because being a sport parent is one thing, being a former athlete and being a sport parent is another. So I know you also have your own story too about your own trauma to triumph as well. So it's really finding that work-life balance. And I'm just really happy that you're here sharing that story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So tell me, what is the T.I.G.E.R method as I hear the music in the background?
Yeah, so I'm a mindset and resiliency coach for competitive athletes. So there's a couple different ways that I define the T.I.G.E.R method, but basically it's a self-help. I've written it as a playbook. I have it right here, actually. I was going to show you. So the T.I.G.E.R method playbook, but I've put it together in a way that I can walk athletes through getting to know themselves better. It's all about deepening that connection to self, and that's when I get into my whole life's currency is showing up. Because in order for us to show up, and we need to be in alignment. We need to understand our core values. We need to understand our boundaries, our standards, our deal breakers, all the things. And then when we know how to fill our cup everybody gets our overflow, right? You're able to contribute to the neighborhood in which you live. You're able to be a better coworker. You're a better parent. Your well is not dry. So that's my whole thing about life's currency showing up. It's not about time or money.
And
But
I
yeah,
love
it's a
that
playbook for athletes.
I love that you call it a playbook, because in this day and age, I mean, it really is
Who
something
wants a workbook? Come on. Right?
No, right. And when you think of playbook, you do think of athletes, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
for
that's
sure.
the first thing that comes to mind. I think you actually are really marketing that well, because to think about it that way, it's going to, I don't even only think it'll be athletes, because like you said, who wants to work? Right. And with that, your background being a former Division I athlete, you went to the University of New Hampshire, and then you played with in Ottawa, right? You were with
Ottawa
a
Raiders,
professional league. Yeah. How was that? I mean, was that like always a goal for you to move into that space as a professional athlete?
I was a rehab player. My dad put me in a hockey camp when I was like 14 with younger. I felt like they were like 10, because I remember sitting in the change room with the instructors. I was like, what the heck, Dad? Why am I with all these little kids? But I didn't know how to play hockey. And then I didn't want to go. After that first day, I came back and I never wanted to play ringette again. And then it just started. I just was talking. I was a really fast skater, strong skater. And then I started getting letters and talking to Harvard and Princeton and Yale, and then went on some recruiting trips, and it kind of just took on a life of its own. I was never, as much as I always fall into leadership roles, I always, I didn't get, like, once I left the arena, I left the arena. Like, I didn't take, if we lost, we lost, moving on type thing. Like, I never got really caught up in it. So I was just grateful that it kind of all just happened. Like, I was just a happy-go-lucky, high-energy person until that time, right? So I wasn't dreaming of being a hockey player when I was younger. I mean, I was really, really good at ringette. I didn't want to leave it. So my dad put me in the camp.
Do you think some of that comes from just being able to let go of your expectations? Because as an athlete, and I played high school sports and then first year college sports, more intramural, like I wasn't on that path to anything that was division or a pro. But for you, it seems like you really just were embodying the sport and enjoying the time. Whereas there are parents out there, and kids too, that take it so seriously that it's no longer the play. Right?
Yeah.
They lose the idea of the play. So it seems like you had quite a nice balance with that, and didn't really treat it like I'm going this route. That's the way I'm going.
Yeah. I mean, I put 100% into everything that I set my mind to. So, I mean, we would be work ethic wise, like, I put the time in, but I didn't, a big thing that I teach now is sports are what you do. They're not who you are. At that time in my life, though, it was my identity as an athlete. Yeah. And so, like, we would hit the ice, hit the weight room, and then I'd hop on the treadmill for an hour just cause while everybody went home. Like, I was just I was just a happy-go-lucky. Yeah, I was really grateful. I didn't feel that stress really until after university, and it was kind of like, what am I supposed to do now? Or, after playing a bit. So that was a big one for me. I was very lucky. I really enjoyed my playing career. Yeah, I did.
Is it something you wanted?
I'm really glad there was no social media around that time. There's no proof.
Not just for sports, but for everything. I think about that all the time as a college professor. I always tell my kids, I'm like, be careful what you put out there.
Yeah.
Be careful what you put out there. Right. So the one statement that you just said, and I heard you do this on a television interview too, sports are what you do. Sports are what you do. It's not who you are. And if we could just embody that so much more than just with sports, but in life in general, like your career is not who you are. Yeah. It's like finding who you are is going within, right?
Absolutely. This is all about the inner game. And that's why, as athletes, a lot of times we train from the neck down. And there's a huge focus now that you're starting to see. People are getting on the bandwagon. They're realizing we really need to treat the mental fitness of the athlete as well. I mean, you're going to lose games. You're going to, you're going to have to, like, even coaches. I talked to, when I interviewed Claude Julien. He's one of the longest NHL coaches. And then I was interviewing with a NCAA coach. And both of them, like, the kids should be speaking to the coach for themselves. I mean, we're robbing each other of this development, right? So by doing it for them. So I really focus on self-leadership. The T.I.G.E.R acronym stands for Together in Grace, Everything Rises. So it's all about being gracefully human. And the journey is a sweet spot, right? It's like, there's nowhere to get to. That's why life's currency is showing up. It's being in the moment. It's being present, and it keeps you grounded in the present when you think that way. So, yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. The part about not doing everything for your kids. And that was a conversation I just had before we pressed record here. I'm at my mom's house, given the background. I'm at my mom's house, but she had her trainer come over, and her trainer has a son who is Division I, playing continuous sports for an extra year. They asked him to play, and he's really good. But I asked her, I was like, what is the one thing that you would share with parents out there if you have a question for Janine even? And she's like, you got to let your kid figure it out for themselves. Let them talk to the coaches. So it seems like there are some parents that truly embody that, but then there are the helicopter parents. Like, what is the value in that?
I don't even carry my kids' hockey bag. Nope. It's your bag. You carrying it. Nope.
Yeah.
You need to set yourself, because if I'm not there, they need to self-trust. I feel like a lot of my work is around learning to self-soothe as an adult. But that leadership from deepening your connection to self, you're able to self-lead so much better, and self-reliance. You know, when you do this type of work and you really introspect, and that was the gift of breast cancer for me, was the season of silence, having that period of time to really introspect, really dig deep into my thoughts, empty them out, and organize what I want to keep in my life, what's a priority, and what I want to focus on. So for athletes, when they're able to do that, they can make decisions without relying on mom and dad. You know, they trust that they can set themselves up for success, get their bags ready the night before. You know, I'm always like, what do we need to be successful tomorrow? They'll lie their clothes out the night before. I mean, my kids don't come downstairs. They're not allowed to come down until they make their beds. That first one of the day. Right. And, when they start being able to think for themselves, they'll be so much better action takers too. And they learn responsibility, accountability, you know. Otherwise, again, we're just delaying their development when we try to do everything for them. It sucks. Sometimes you're like, oh, I could really do this by myself a lot quicker, you know, because we're such a busy society. But then it's kind of like the whole slow down to speed up. It's like taking that time to show them a few times, and then they're able to self-direct, right? And that's the end game. It's building your kids' self-esteem and helping them feel confident going out into the world alone, because we're not going to be there, you know, when they're peer pressured or in a situation, if we don't help them, you know, build that confidence now.
Absolutely. And you touched on two things about self-soothing. So what does Janine do to self-soothe?
I write and read. I love to meditate. The meditation was the big gift that I got into after my breast cancer diagnosis, and really leaning in to the nudges. I made a promise to myself, and I talked about this in my TED talk, but my TEDx talk, I made a promise to myself. I was in a pretty bad spot after breast cancer. Just felt completely disconnected. I was like, who are you? You know, and I've had big visions for myself. So I got into walking and meditation. Those were my big things. And that process of slowing down, and it takes a bit. I write daily, and that really helps me move the needle forward. That's a big one. Fresh air, nature, you know, and just organizing my thoughts and understanding myself.
And I would imagine for you, Janine, since you have given your children the tools to self-develop, to self-lead, and to really own their own lives, it's reclaiming your time in that. Like you said, you could do the lunches, you could do everything, you could pack their bags, and it could be a lot faster, and boom, it's done. But you've reclaimed your time in this aspect of being able to teach them how to lead themselves, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's a win-win all around. Yeah, for sure. And, you know, even my daughter, she's 10, she's got a beautiful head of hair, and she likes when I wash her hair for her and everything like that. But, you know, I'm like, sweetheart, I need you to start trying and do it yourself. I know it might take a little bit longer. She's like, Mom, I like when you do it. And I'm like, I know. And she does have, it's like down to her butt, and it's curly and thick, and it takes time. She's blessed. I had hair like that when I was younger. But anyways, I'm like, what will you do if I'm not here? You need to, and that's just the conversation. I'm like, you guys need to be able to do this yourself so that you feel confident and you can do it without me. So yeah, there's that little bit too of like, oh, I'm losing my babies, but you are reclaiming your time by making them self-lead, right?
Mm-hmm. How old are the babies?
Uh, George is 8. He's going to be 9, and Sally's 10. And then my bonus child, my stepson, Logan, is 18.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, that's an age range. I mean, from what an
I moved
8-year-old
in
can
when he
do to
was
what an
5,
18-year-old can do, you know?
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, and I mean, we just, even when if we're at a restaurant, they have to order looking the waiter in the eye. They like eye contact, body language is a big thing that I teach as well. It's like you're saying one thing, but your body's telling me a completely different story. You need to be aware of it because people will judge you, or, you know, the perception that you give off. How do you want to be perceived? If it's something that's important to you, right, you need to be cognizant of that body language. But eye contact, we make them order their food themselves. We don't order for them. Like, they have to do it. They've done it. I mean, this is before COVID. We don't go out as much anymore, but it was funny. I think they were like 4. They're like, "Excuse me, are you going to take our drink order?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, we take these kids out way too much." And that was before.
So they're used to like, that's supposed to be done within 2 minutes of sitting at the table.
Yeah, they'll even like, you know, having them purchase something at the gas station as opposed to me doing it from, like, teaching those little, you know, everyday things that they need to navigate life with.
Yes, you can cut your own meat.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And on that, I mean, what you're doing is you're creating well-rounded young adults to become well-rounded adults, to become well-rounded leaders. And that goes back to the kind of parenting you're doing, which is really important. And it takes a little time, a little extra time with certain children. It is frustrating, that need extra
and there's
support.
A lot of no's. Yeah, it is frustrating. It can, like, my husband has ingrained this. He's taught me a lot about this stuff too. He's 8 years older. And so he had obviously my bonus child before I came on the scene and we had our own, but he's a great teacher. I've learned a lot from just watching him, whereas like I want to be like, no, I'm just going to make it. I'll just do it. Da, da, da. And that was in the early years, right? And then obviously when I started doing all my my playbook and meditation and having that self-reflection, it was like you could see it now from up above, right? You're like, oh gosh, yeah, we need to do this better, or I need to self-lead better so that the kids can self-lead better too, right? So it's just, it all affects each other.
So tell me, what was after your pro athlete life? What came after that? Were you in the business world, the corporate world for a while?
Well, I was previously married to a gentleman who played football, and I was living in California and Texas at the time. So I had made that move. I was working with Lululemon actually, helping open stores in Texas, which was really fun. They actually opened my eyes to the whole world of goal setting, and I did the landmark education through them. They sent some of us there. Yeah,
me too.
And, yeah. Well, what's really neat is it's kind of like understanding. It's like looking under the hood of a car. It's like my husband now. I was like, I made him go to Landmark when we first met because I was like, you need to be able to speak my language. I'm not going through this again, you know. And he's like, now he can be like, that's just a racket, Janine. That's something I didn't say. You know, you just created that story. So it just allows. That's the key, is communication, right? On any relationship or so yeah, that was a big one. So was living in Texas, and then when I came back to Ottawa, opened up my fitness studio, Inside Out Studio Bar.
Everything you've done, moving around, I mean, obviously coming out of the professional athlete, moving into an area that is corporate. I mean, that's very corporate, working with the Lululemon world, but also being a mom, that's a full-time job. And then you have your own balance to take care of your health. And you mentioned that you are a breast cancer survivor. How did that play into life? Like, when did that present itself?
May of 2020, I woke up and my right hand was actually on my left breast. And it was literally, I felt like my grandpa called me Tiger, how this all came to be. And I truly believe in my heart of hearts, he put my hand there because my grandma passed away after an 8-year battle with breast cancer. And I just woke up and was like, told my husband, I was like, what is this? And then he's like, call the doctor right away. And next thing you know, 3 weeks later, I'm in the breast cancer clinic in Ottawa. And it was like, just honestly, the way I approached it, it kind of felt like game on. I have been through so much already between divorce and bankruptcy. We've had to navigate some big storms. And so it was kind of like, okay, well, what are we, game on. So it really didn't hit me until kind of everything was quiet. The first 6 weeks, like, people from my studio, people were coming out of the woodwork, just being so kind and dropping off food or things after my surgeries. I mean, people were just so kind when I was diagnosed, when they found out about it, because I was 38 at the time. And because it was COVID, I had to remove one breast at a time. So weird. Yeah. So I had to do one breast was removed in June of 2020, and then the next in August. And then the next year there was reconstruction, and then there's fat grafting, and then they were worried about ovarian cancer because I'm a BRCA2 positive. So that makes you at high risk for breast or ovarian. So I was like, I didn't want to take a chance, but now I'm in full blown menopause. So if I start sweating uncontrollably, that's why.
Oh my gosh. I hear you
so it was
there.
a lot. So it wasn't, I kind of processed, I'm very like, I just go in 2 feet in. My friends were kind of like, how are you not freaking out right now? And I was like, well, what is that going to change? How's that going to help the situation? It's not going to change my diagnosis. So my friends, my mom was even like, maybe you should stop smiling and laughing so much because people are going to think you're okay. And I'm like, well, you can still be healing and be happy, right? So that's been my mindset though. And that's where, I can see how this playbook has come to be, and it really is that resilient mindset. And I'm grateful I had it. My character I've really gotten to, I love that about myself, that I am that resilient and that I can navigate storms and be okay. That's something I've had to learn.
You can still be healing and be happy. Totally hit me right here, because it's so true. Like, we have to find the humor in the healing. We have to be able to go there, and just feel our feelings and know all parts of ourselves matter. So do you think part of that comes from the resiliency and what you've built with an athletic background?
Oh, for sure. I mean, work ethic, dedication, discipline, all that stuff. It's kind of, you got the long game too, right? Mm-hmm. So I was very aware of not trying to just sit, like not look, I knew this was going to be a process. I knew it wasn't going to, be something overnight. So I just rolled with it. Honestly, I was very happy to sit with my journal and it kind of was like, sorry, mom can't help right now. That sounds terrible. It's like, I can't make dinner. I just had surgery. I was very excited for a little break of some of those things. I kind of had an excuse to sit down because our days, we're so busy. We don't make the time. And then I was like, no, I'm going to cultivate and nurture this relationship that I've created with myself. And it was like a whole relearning and understanding of who I was. And even the whole identity thing, like I recognized I always introduced myself as the hockey player. And then when I had the studio, it was like, hey, I'm Janine. I own Inside Out Studio Bar. Well, and then when that was done, it was like, well, here we got to rewrite the script again. You're not. So it's just funny, the identity pieces. And breast cancer really taught me that I muscled my way through for 40 years. Like I really, I tried to, a big thing in the work that I do is about releasing your control. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times, like I have my, in my book here, a lot of times, like I go through 7 steps. So if anyone's listening and they're stuck, because I find when we're doing the self-help work, we hear it all, but we're like, how do you actually grow and evolve? Like no one really explains that. And that's the thing. It's not like you take a course and it's done. It's literally every day, I'll do a brain dump when I wake up, and then I'll meditate, and then I'll write what I downloaded in the meditation, or what came from me, or what learning, or what new awareness I had. And then the brain dump in the beginning is just because, like, get out, like if you're upset about something, or you're trying to deal with the stress at work, it's like, get it all on the page, get it out of your system so you can drop in to your meditation a lot more quickly. It's not circling, in your head. And then I'm able to come back with what came to me during the meditation. So that's a huge part of introspection. So I always say, like the way I explain it is, one, you have to surrender. You have to just surrender to, and I feel like I was pretty good at surrendering to what happens to me in life, as opposed to playing the victim or being reactive and freaking out, right? It's like, okay, let's just take a deep breath, surrender. Number 2, you want to introspect. So that's where the self-reflection, the writing, the meditation. And then 3, I always talked about people follow the nudges. Like we get so many downloads, and I do believe that the universe is communicating with us. I do believe in all that stuff. And when I followed the nudges, that's what led me to the Hay House. That's what led me to landing a TEDx. Like I remember being on a treadmill and it was like, you should do a TED Talk. And I was like, what? I'm not doing a TED Talk. Like I actually did that. My husband was like, who are you talking to? I was like, oh, no one. And then that was a promise I made to myself after breast cancer. I'm going to follow the nudges and see where that takes me. And it has changed my life from doing that. So follow the nudges is number 3. And then it's get into action. So you take action. And then the number 5 is release what's out of your control. So as long as you show up and you pull, it's like I always say, life shows up for you because you show up for it. That's the currency, right? And you can only control what you can control. The rest, you can't worry about it. And that's where it's release what's out of your control and then just keep showing up, rinse and repeat. Just keep doing that. And you also, by doing that, you cultivate and nurture a relationship with yourself. You start to understand, what's important to you, your daily habits, your routines, your boundaries, everything we say yes to, who gets the no? Do I get the no because I say yes to everything? Or do my kids get the no because I doing, a webinar in the evening? So it's taking those things into account as well. And that's just part of being self-aware, like self-mastery. The way it starts with self-awareness. Okay. Then we go into self-observation. Then it's self-love because you need a whole lot of grace when you do this work. We got to be gracefully human. We are not perfect. We are going to mess up. You are going to be crying. Like the emotions, it's not going to make sense, but you just have to be willing to sit with it. Like there were some times where I'd be meditating and I would just start bawling and I had no idea where this was coming from. You could just feel it. I wanted to be a speaker. I used to feel tight right here. I'd always feel tight.
So you're going to feel it in the chakra up here. Sure.
Yeah. And then I got in, like, I just, without knowing, I started tapping. I didn't even know what tapping was. And I was doing it just by instinctually knowing, we're such smart creatures, but we don't give ourselves that, a chance to sometimes create a space that we can sit with our thoughts.
Absolutely. Right? The silence, like sitting in the silence, the answers come. Our higher self knows whatever you believe in, whether it's God, universe, source, spirit guides, whatever, it really is all about self. It's all, you're connected to that relationship.
Actually, I love that you said that because it's really important to anyone listening. When that voice in your head, you need to become best friends with. Like I would talk to, when I started writing and digging into myself, it was like, okay, where does controlling Janine come from? And then I would focus like on that. Or why did that trigger you? Where is this coming from? What past experience did I have that's really, creating this for me? So
right.
Because otherwise
what story are you telling yourself?
Yeah. Otherwise it's like Groundhog Day. You keep recreating the same situations. It's like I tell my friends, someone who's, if they keep having relationship after relationship and it ends the same way or whatnot. And I was like, what's the common denominator here? It's not them, it's you, right? So true, it's Janine. Taking that time to do the work because we want to evolve. Like we upgrade our technology, but we don't upgrade ourselves.
That's a great line. That's so true. I mean, we constantly have to evolve as well, and it's not just about learning new things or new tools. It's really going within and identifying what's going on in your own operating system. That's something I always talk about as like the operating system. Yeah. This is the most important one, right?
Absolutely.
So if you have too many apps open, it's going to run slowly.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's just clarity of thought.
Yeah.
And there's when I say something, when I do this work, there's no voice in my head competing with what I say. Like it's so aligned for me. It feels, it comes naturally. And before I did this work, like I always had the goal in my head, but I would hear the back chatter or there was like an imposter syndrome coming up but because I've done the work, I'm fully confident in what it is that I'm teaching, right? I believe it through 1,000%. And I know I can improve someone's life if they are just coachable and open to navigating their own thoughts and emotions. That obviously, what's the word I'm looking for? That get them into action or inaction, right? Are they stuck?
Yeah. And sometimes no action is action. That's the action you need, is just to be still. All right.
Yeah.
That's great. Listen, you want to answer some questions?
Sure.
I love everything you're sharing. And I really hope you're doing well too. I mean, with everything you've been through, to just touch on this real quick. By the way, those who are listening, if you missed it real quick, Janine Charron is our guest here on HIListically Speaking. If you are inspired, if you're touched, if you're moved by this conversation with Janine, please pay it forward, share this conversation of Holistically Speaking. Let us know what you think. Drop us a line too at speakpipe.com/holistically speaking and share your voice, because we all have a voice, right? We're all here to empower, Janine. So here is, I want to ask you real quick, like, knowing that you've been through cancer during the pandemic, because we didn't really touch on that. I can't even imagine, like, we were dealing with our own stuff just being in the pandemic, but where are you now? Like, how has this been an even larger learning experience for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm good. I'm back. I just started back at the gym. So I'm good in that sense. You know what? The pandemic, it's kind of like everyone was stuck at home with me. So
we were all together in it. Big hug.
I wasn't missing out on anything, right?
Yeah.
I was like, well, of all times to be home, I mean, it's not like, nothing was going on. So I kind of didn't feel like I was missing out on much, right?
Chance to heal more so?
Yeah, it was permission to heal. And you really, it kind of just, you gotta leave the expectations out, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how surgery's going to go. You don't know how you're going to heal. So I really just took it one day at a time. I did not go down a rabbit hole on Google of like reading other people's stories.
Become your own WebMD. Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah.
It's crazy out there.
Especially in the world of breast cancer, there's so many different formulas, and like, depending on your diagnosis and treatment, everything is just different for everyone.
And so there's new care now, which, is it right for you? It might be, it might not be. It's like you have to realize, and this for listeners out there, and especially coming from the holistic health world, there's something we learned in integrative nutrition that it's called bioindividuality. Every body is different, right? We might have the same mechanics, but your body might not take to something that is somebody else's body. You might take a more holistic approach. You might be open to more modern medicine. Whatever it is, find what works for you, right? Yeah. With whatever it is, be it cancer or anything else, Yeah, for sure. Because we can go down that rabbit hole, for sure. All right, my dear, let's get some questions answered from the folks that have written in. And this all happened like within the last hour, by the way. This is how important this topic is. Okay. Oh, wow. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it. I'm just your dinging going off, so I'm just turning.
Okay. Let me look at them real quick just so I don't butcher this. But okay, let's see what Miss Jenny has to say. Jenny from Jersey. My question about kids in sports is always what you do when you have a kid who doesn't have any confidence and he's very insecure and doesn't go out to try more sports. It's a personal issue.
Yeah, so confidence is built in the doing. You don't become confident. You're not confident before, right? It comes in the action. So finding small wins to build the confidence, right? I would create, depending on what this child likes to do, start there and build his confidence there. So if he's really good at whatever, you just got to pick something, shooting or give him a goal of like a small goal. I need more information about like what he likes and what he's into and all those things. And then sport
is like the sport itself.
What's that, sorry?
You mean what the sport is that they're into?
Yeah, she said it was lack of confidence. Correct in the question?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So the only way to build that confidence, again, is that whole deepening, even journaling and stuff like that, like, or asking questions. I have a journal prompt book. Like if you just Google journal prompts, I mean, helping them understand themselves. So, like what's important to you, but focus on what they're really good at. And then the language around that is, what are you great at? And then what do you need? What do we need to improve upon? And then give him small goals on what he wants to improve upon. And then when he reaches that goal, guess what? He builds his confidence. So great. And that's just doing anything in life. Like encourage him to speak up for himself. Like, is he doing everything for himself, or is the parent doing it for them? So that would be a question that I would ask. Like I'd be curious how that's running at home, because that affects his development as a self-leader, right?
Yeah, I remember you talking about that in a recent TV interview about the delayed development. Building the resiliency is not doing everything for them, right?
Yeah, we won't.
Yeah, got to let them grow a little bit. And
and even like my kiddos have like a dry erase board in their room, and it's like, these are your top, like it says, they have to make their bed, brush their teeth, like little things that they can easily knock off and achieve. And it's like, I'm not paying you for this. Or sometimes, kids ask for money. I'm like, this is just part of being a contributing citizen of the world,
Mm-hmm.
being human. This is what's required for you to succeed in life. So it's really like setting that standard too, right? And then they hold
Yeah.
themselves to a higher standard.
So that is great advice. And interestingly enough, looking at another question that just came in, again, dealing with a confidence issue here.
It's all
This is
yeah.
from Christine. And I know she has a couple hockey players in her home and a lot of hockey. I think they even have the hockey in the backyard too, like you mentioned. And it's basically her question is, how do you keep their confidence up even after they have a bad game? That's a good question.
So, I mean, that's part of sports. You're going to have good days and bad days, but also, again, go focus on what you did right. And then, okay, if you didn't play well, where do you feel you could have done better? Okay, so next time, and then you set an intention when they go to practice. So really being intentional, rather than just showing up and going through the motions, do the coaches know that this is a goal of yours? Do you know that this is something you need to improve upon? So again, it's going back to that introspection and reflection, and video is helpful. Like if you videotape your child so they can see themselves even better, right? Because it's one thing for them to think they know how they came across, but to see them, like we always did video replay, obviously at the higher level. That's just part of it, being an athlete. And so that's good gives them great feedback, because they might think they didn't do something, but then they see it on video and they're like, oh, so then they have that view.
And that's the thing in real life too. Like as somebody who has been coaching people on public speaking and just in every day, I'm like, record yourself. Yeah. You probably did way better than you're giving yourself credit for.
Yeah.
You know, like just press record, because you will find out that it's not as bad as you thought it was. We're in our head and the inner bully loves to step in. So that's a great piece of advice, to record yourself. And that's kind of normal with athletes anyway. So it just go back and watch it. That's the big thing.
Yeah. And again, you just start focusing on what they're doing well.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And then what you need to improve upon. Also, when kids get in the car, are you tearing their game apart? Or are you focus on what they did right first, then focus on, okay, what do we need to improve upon? And then it's just an action plan. Then it's not a hit on their self-esteem, right? And it's that's choosing the right words too as a parent, as opposed to like, oh, you should have done this. Why aren't you skating? No, and you're just tearing them apart.
That's not going to help anything in the long run, I imagine.
Yeah. And then you're teaching them how to self-reflect by asking them those questions, right?
Yeah. Right. Great. Love that. This is a big topic, I think, especially in sports where there's contact. And this comes from Travis. Travis lives in Denver. And he said, biggest fear above all others, head injuries and spinal cord. How do you deal with potential injuries and being a parent?
Well,
or just in general, not even being a parent yourself.
Yeah, you can't live in fear. I mean, I was talking to Chris Pronger about this on last week, and he played in the NHL for 19 years, and you can't, like, he had a slap shot to the heart that, like, so I mean that could have been detrimental, but you're not going to be the best athlete you can be if you're going out scared. And if parents are living in fear, that's a trickle down. You don't want your child to live in fear, because if they play from a fearful state, they are going to get injured. What we focus on, we find. And you've got a reticular activating system in your brain. It's like a heat-seeking missile. So whatever you place in it on its radar, it's going to go to work to make it happen in your life. That's why I love goal setting and vision casting and all that stuff, because now the direction. So I would make sure that conversation is not focused there, because you don't want you're basically waiting for it to happen. Yeah. By talking about it and giving it energy. And the way that I would control that is just train, be strong, study your craft so that, you're playing smart, obviously. But I wouldn't want to be in that headspace, the feeling like that fear and trust. Like if you do all the work off the ice, trust that when you're on the ice, I mean, flukes are going to happen. No one plans for a spinal cord injury. I actually interview some athletes that are in wheelchairs after like a diving accident, in shallow water, that are now in a chair, and that transition is of life after sports. But I wouldn't want to live in that space of being fearful. I'd be like, focus on your goals, focus on, get a vision board, focus on the things that you can improve and have control of. We have no control over that stuff. So
The idea of the vision board or whiteboarding in a kid's room, I love that. I mean, or just in the family room. I have families who have it in the kitchen, like the common ground where everyone has a section, and then they have shared goals too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's
There's
important.
individual goals and shared goals.
Yeah, and that's the whole part of being part of a team. You have to take, and that's the whole thing about showing up. Like, what are you doing when you're away from the rink? And are you bringing your best self to the rink? So that's why this work is so important, because if you just got in a fight with a boyfriend or girlfriend, or, you know, you've gone through some financial stress, how are you supposed to show up and be present? Well, that's eating at you. And that's why this work helps you self-soothe. It helps you compartmentalize. Like when you're a professional, like when I went through my bankruptcy, I was crying in my car, but I knew when I walked through those studio doors, like these people are coming to me for a break in their day. They're not here to hold me. So I had to like wipe my tears, walk in and, you know, be professional. And then when I left, it was back to the tears in the car. It was just part of, that's part of being a great athlete, is that's got that awareness.
That's your currency.
It's all, yeah. That totally is. And when you are able and understand ways to process, like writing and understanding yourself, you don't get as anxious. You don't get as, because you're able to think it through, and you know how to, handle your emotions. That's a big part of this learning. It's focused on the emotions.
Love everything you shared. Talking about confidence, talking about goals, talking about overcoming fears. I mean, really embodying who you are. And it's truly coming back to the mindset, which we talk about here on Holistically Speaking. I know you talk about it. It's why I gravitate to you. It's why this conversation is happening. But I want to do something really fun before we go. I know you need to scoot, but I'd play a game. And because you're an athlete and you live that life, you know about rapid movement, right? And intentional movement. So I want to play a rapid fire game with you. I'm going to throw out a word that I wrote down from our conversation. I want you to come back with the first word that comes to mind. Don't think too much about it. Cool?
Okay.
Just one word.
Let's do it.
Let's do it, girl. Let's do it. Okay. Community.
Nurture.
Values.
Strong.
Tiger.
Method.
Leadership.
Skills.
Control.
Self.
Cancer.
Survivor. Woo!
Yeah, girl. Bankruptcy.
Worst time of my life.
I'm going to give you that. Currency.
Worldly.
Fear.
Nothing.
Goals.
Drive.
Or maybe I should say goals. Drive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. That's so great. You are so inspiring. I loved this conversation. I'm so glad we were able to make this happen. And thank you to everybody that shared your questions. So last minute too, but we got those questions in. And I know that people are going to be finding value in this conversation. But I want you, Janine, to share some last words. Like, what would you like, holistically speaking, listeners to take away from this conversation?
Don't look outside of you. It's all on the inside. I mean, the growth that happens is understanding who you are. It's the connection to that voice in your head that keeps talking back to you. You guys need to be in a relationship together so that you can self-soothe and self-trust, and just know that no matter what you've gone through or going through, you will get to the other side. You just have to keep showing up.
Okay, sunshine, it is time to show up and find that tiger within by reaching out to Janine. You can connect with her on all social media and through her website and score really big. I promise you that. I shared all those links in the podcast notes. And remember, I want to hear from you. How are you showing up for yourself? Janine talks about how having grace and loving yourself is really important. And we talk about that with the Hug It Out method too, right? Healing, understanding, and gratitude starts within. So I want you to share your voice. And I'm going to share it in an upcoming episode of Holistically Speaking that's devoted to you, makes you the guest of this show. So all you have to do is go to speakpipe.com/holistically speaking and tell me what it is about yourself that you are grateful for, that you love, that you think makes you different from everyone else on this planet. Go ahead, hug it out with yourself, and share that message on Hilistically Speaking and SpeakPipe. So if you are a podcaster, let's take it one step further, shall we? I want to help you amplify your message. We're all in this podcast community to make a difference. So make sure you share the name of your show too if you add your link and you add your voice to SpeakPipe at Hilistically Speaking. And if you believe that you can still be healing and be happy, hey, I am with you, and so is Janine. Why not join us for the next Havening Happy Hour, a chance to self-regulate and self-soothe and learn self-havening with me as your guide. Grab the link in the notes, find out when the next one is coming up. I know there's one happening soon, and I want to see you there. And if you love this episode, share it with a friend, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss your shot. Hilistically Speaking is edited by Two Market Media with music by Lipbone Redding and listened to by you. So thank you. Remember, it's about the small wins, right? Take the shot, be kind to your mind. Remember, I love you, I believe in you, and I will see you next week. Be well.
I know the